Hey, 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 hey. So, let's talk about something. And what are we going to talk about? Well, I figured that it was time for me to talk a little bit about my toolbox. Because you may or may not have heard that I'm one of those minimalists who try to just keep things as simple as possible in code and in life as well. I believe it's the only one of the few pieces of advice my father gave me when I was younger, and it stuck with me. He said to me, Frederick, don't create too many musts for yourself. Don't don't get too many strings that pull you down in your life, because they accumulate over time, and you will find that sooner or later you're not able to move as much as you want to, and your things end up owning you. So I've always had a Spartan mindset since that day, and it's been working out pretty well so far. I mean, it's not all good, but it's working out. So how do we tie this into code? Well, this is a video about my personal preferred tools for different different things. I'm going to talk about, let's start by just talking about a text editor. My absolute hands down favorite text editor is Visual Studio Code. I used Sublime to start off with, and then I used Atom for a little while, and then I ended up with Visual Studio Code. And I do that because it is very, very, very feature rich, very nice when it comes to my personal favorite aspects of it is, it has extensions like you would expect from Sublime. It has a very nice Git diffing system where you inbuilt into it. I mean, you can do this with Sublime as well, but it has that out of the box. It has support for some plugins that are very nice, such as Prettier.js, which is it's a JavaScript code format. You absolutely have to use this if you're at all working with JavaScript. It's fairly recent, so look into that. And what else? It has it's a little bit slower in terms of text searching and so forth for Sublime, but it's at the same time it has support for all the same stuff. And yeah, those are probably my favorite features. I don't know. It's actually, now that I speak out, when I say these things out loud, it feels so silly that why would I switch from Sublime? But yeah, no, I really like this code editor. I might think of other reasons why I like it at a later stage, but that's the short list. Anywho, then for testing, you may probably be able to guess this. I like to use Jest. For JavaScript testing, it's my go-to for all types of testing. When it comes to web servers in Node.js, it's Express.js. That's my absolute hands-down favorite tool, and it is that because it's very, very, I can't even believe I'm saying this, lightweight. It's so lightweight because everything's lightweight. And some people want more features and so forth, but for the most part, when I'm making something for a server-side implementation in Node, I don't need something like Happy or Sales or whatever. So Express is very nice, I think. So, and then we come on to databases. If I am creating, that depends on the use case, but for the most part I use MongoDB for almost everything. Mongoose is it's easy, it gets you started very quickly. If I need relationship, I use Postgres, because MySQL is great, but Postgres is a little bit more modern, has a few more bells and whistles that I prefer. Anywho, what else is there in terms of JavaScript must-have tools? Well, of course, NPM and all that good stuff. But those are for the most part, I survive on just using those. And then I have of course, linters. That's not specific to JavaScript, but let's talk about it in the context of JavaScript. So ESLint is an absolute must-have, which it's going to help you format your code and keep your code nice and clean and so forth. Then you have StyleLint. It's not a must-have, but if you're alone, if I'm alone, I don't use StyleLint, but if I'm on a project with other people, I always use StyleLint, which is basically ESLint for Sass and CSS files and so forth, which is great. Then another must-have tool is, what else is there for JavaScript? That's a good question. What else is there? Well, I'm gonna put Lodash on the list there. I can survive without it, but it's very close to, like, because most of the functions, especially the get function, most of these functions are things that I use so often that I might as well just import Lodash by default, because it makes things much easier on me if I don't have to write these functions myself. And since you can import a specific function and you don't have to pull in the whole library, there's really no benefit in for me writing it myself, in my opinion. But that's for JavaScript. So when it comes to Scala or Java, I use IntelliJ. I very recently went over to that because I have been running everything on Eclipse earlier. So that's pretty must-have tool. You need some type of IDE to effectively work with these languages, in my opinion. So what else is there? Okay, so let's talk about front-end frameworks. Well, it's probably no secret that I prefer React. And if I'm making something non-trivial, I use Redux, which is like half the industry right now. Nothing new or fancy there. And if you are using Redux, you should really look into the browser plugin that is so nice. Now I can't remember the exact what the name is, but in essence it creates a very nice inspector in it's a Chrome plugin. It might be available for Firefox as well, but it basically allows you to get a very nice overview of how the dispatching works and the actions and the store state, how that works in Redux. That's a must-have if you're working with Redux. If you're using something else, not so much, but that's also another must-have. And what else? I think that's pretty much it, really, for the things that I use in almost every single project. At least for the tools. And then I have a few practices I use in every project that I have myself. Now, I am going to admit that I am really bad at making sure that nothing I push to master or that I push to the remote repository isn't broken. So I use commit hooks. My pre-commit hook is my favorite hook. It's basically just I include a script that runs all my tests for me and fails the commit attempt if my tests aren't all working. I also include a little small script if it's a web server I'm building. I always make sure that I have a script that starts up the server, attempts to start up the server for just a half a second and then kills it immediately. And the reason why I want to do this is because there are always pieces of code that you don't think about testing. I mean, we are supposed to test ideally everything, but we don't. So I think it's always healthy to make sure that you can boot up your system or the server, especially if you're doing this in Node, just for half a second or a very short period, just to make sure that everything's running, because you might have misspelled an import or a require or something like that. Yes, so that's probably the list I have for what I call must-have plugins. And hopefully, if you remember my list now, because even I'm forgetting it, it should be fairly short. And I like to keep things that way, because I honestly think that there are, of course, a lot of other stuff that you could be doing and a lot of other tools. Like, people are going to tell me about, you can use Storybook and you can use, I don't know, all other kinds of very nice to have tools on top of what I've been talking about. And if you want to do that, you absolutely do that. But in my opinion, my life is much happier and much easier the less stuff I have to add on top. And I prefer to discover that for this specific, like I have my core set of tools, and then I discover that, hey, I need some extra stuff, instead of always, jumping on the latest new thing and making sure, and just adding it to my tech stack because it's cool. That being said, though, I still argue that, any decent code, don't dismiss anything. Always keep an open mind and make sure that you're looking at all the modern stuff, and then ask yourself, hey, do I need this? Is this going to provide me a lot of value? And for the most part, you're going to find out that, hey, this was pretty cool, but it's not something that is so critical that I need it every single day. Sometimes you do. And, that's great.